Why does the lost cause of the Confederacy exist, persist, even till today? America isn't only a nation among nations, it is also a nation of nations. Many small nations within it, many of which do not like each other, which is why our presidential elections are so heated. Fearing for this future, I decided, under online advisement, to check out Czesław Miłosz's Native Realm, a search for self-definition. Miłosz was a Polish dissident opposing communism. But the idea of national identity as a form of self-definition, as Miłosz says, or, as Fukuyama talks about, he puts it, struggle for recognition, applies to American nations just as much as European ones. To answer the initial question, as the Poles were absorbed by Russia through the Age of Revolution, as Miłosz describes, the South was, initially quickly, then more gradually, absorbed into the U.S. itself more clearly through rebellion, reconstruction, and finally, reconciliation. And this reconciliation had a cost. The lost cause was a kind of deal from the defeated South. We won't rebel again if you let us keep our memory of the rebellion as a good thing and oppress our former slaves as much as we want. That deal was accepted for a century until the Civil Rights Movement. Now that deal, even its memory, is being revoked, and rightfully so. But this discussion of nation and identity can get very dangerous. In the US, Poland, Russia, China, the Levant, the internet, everywhere. In his chapter on Russia, Miłosz briefly brings up Napoleon's Polish troops in Haiti, and that really got me thinking about Napoleon, as I tend to do. Here's one of my favorite quotes about him, from Gustave Flaubert. Russia has Suvorov, England has Nelson, and Prussia has Frederick the Great. I would add, Canada has Isaac Brock. First Nations have Tecumseh and Sitting Bull and various others, depending on which nation. Haiti has Toussaint Louverture. South America has Simon Bolivar, as well as San Martin, among many others. The North has Grant and Sherman. The South has Jacksons and Lee. But the world has Napoleon. Why does the world have Napoleon? After all, his final and victorious opponent, the Duke of Wellington, also led multinational armies and saw more of the world through British conquests in India than Napoleon did. But Napoleon promoted, to both his benefit and detriment, the idea of the nation as an armed political unit throughout the Atlantic world and in Europe. I should give some background for the unfamiliar. Europe and North America in 1800 looked roughly like this. Here is where Poland used to be, before it was partitioned by its neighbors in the mid-1790s during the French Revolutionary Wars. To try to rebuild their lost nation, many Poles fled to France and joined their armies, including Napoleon's Polish cavalry, which tended to look like this. Poland's national anthem originates from Napoleon's Italian campaign. And here is the French colony of Saint-Domingue, what is now Haiti. Haiti produced a third of the world's sugar and had a massive enslaved population to do it. By 1801, a revolutionary war of liberation to end slavery had been raging there for a decade. In order to maintain his empire with that sweet sugar money and to fund the vast Louisiana territory he strong-armed from Spain, Napoleon sent numerous troops to end it, including Polish ones, who ultimately joined the Haitians. Americans would have a similar situation with Irish troops invading Mexico. Napoleon's failure to subdue Haiti led him to sell Louisiana to the United States. Not for the last or first time would one people's liberation be another's misery. It's these stories of global interconnectedness that led me to defend Ridley Scott's Napoleon. That has proven to be a vastly minority opinion. I stand by it. Scott bases his movie more on the Napoleonic legend, combined with the Hollywood gangster movie. As an accurate retelling of Napoleon's life, it fails. As a depiction of Napoleonic warfare, it mostly fails. The film shows Napoleon as an insecure, angry, horny tyrant. His accomplishments in warfare are poorly represented, and outside are completely ignored. But so are his greatest crimes. Haiti is never mentioned, although Josephine's connections to the Caribbean are. Neither is Spain. Napoleon's invasion in 1807 would be a watershed moment for its American empire. Neither is Poland, which was a major focus in the 2002 European production. I actually enjoyed and respected the movie as an attempt, rather than a definitive statement. For all it leaves out, it plays a great deal of attention to the material and social culture its people live in, especially in regards to Napoleon's invasion of, rather than retreat from, Russia. Perhaps the 4-hour cut on Apple Plus will improve it. I have always had a fascination with Napoleon, especially as an American. In the US, we tend to sanctify history, moralize about it, treat it as one big episode of G.I. Joe. History isn't G.I. Joe. It's Risk. Napoleon throws that whole mindset to shreds. Is he a villain? A hero? What about his enemies? Coming again from an American perspective, what about the British who defeated him? Napoleon is a confusing figure in American historical consciousness. He fights the British, which is good, but he ends French democracy, which is bad. Of course, this is all an overly simplistic conception. As Russians deal with lawlessness or backwardsness, we Americans deal with mindlessness, an eagerness for simplicity, especially moral simplicity in world affairs. I love studying the Napoleonic era, as well as the man himself, because it resists simplicity more the more you look into it. I'm happy Czeslaw Milosz brings it up in his book on national identity. He has a great mind, one aware of the complexity of the world. I love Milosz's idea of humanization for all, regardless of power dynamics. It is a similarly simple idea, one that fits well within the moral complexity of the Napoleonic era, in Europe anyway. But I don't think it's one we Americans have mastered. Besides, as crazy as it may sound, much of America still thinks of itself as a victim, and then conqueror, of British imperialism. It is the very foundation of American national identity. There are plenty of Americans who use the term redcoat for both a British person, Scots, Welsh, or Northern Irish notwithstanding, and a government tyrant. And yet, looking at the nature of global power today, the relationship has completely changed, even reversed, and it has been so for decades. Britain is now far more subject to American power than the other way around. But what does this Anglophone relationship have to do with Polish-Russian relations? In 2012, Russia celebrated not only Napoleon's invasion in 1812, but Poland's invasion in 1612. And compared to Poland's ups and downs, who worldwide is familiar with the Polish push on Moscow during Russia's time of troubles? In the past few decades, I think the vision of Poland has shifted from just a poor victim to an old power in its own right. Not just families hiding in basements from Nazis and Soviets, but proud winged hussars and imperial lancers who also engaged in wars of conquest, as well as legislative politics before the age of revolutions. The more one studies history, the more one realizes power relations are not fixed, but dynamic. So, to achieve the universal humanization Milosz speaks of, one must realize that humans, nations, states, and the relationships between them are fluid and fragile things. Their struggles for definition and recognition, to say nothing of independence and domination, may well be inevitable. But the recognition of their pain and their power both, this shifting circular dynamic, may be its salve. To recognize their pain, you have to recognize their glory, too. Does this dynamic of struggling for recognition and glory explain both the persistence and character of the American South's lost cause? In psychology, there's the cycle of victim, perpetrator, and protector. Political entities are as capable of taking on all these roles as individuals are. These clips from a 20th century movie depicting a 19th century event show that dynamic very well. And Napoleon and America and even Poland occupy all three. I'm sure plenty others do too. Let me know in the comments.